Short show today. Just going to read a older blog post regarding the Truman Show Part 2, and add some comments. I think it's pretty clear that the illusion is breaking right now very fast. And if you're watching this channel or a select other couple of channels, I think you'll have to agree that the illusion is breaking very, very, very fast right now. We're at a very big moment in U.S. history. You're in a very small group that is going to grow to be a very large group. So while perhaps my legacy won't be secured, you have an opportunity for your legacy to be secured, because some people are going to be remembered as those who brought this to the wider attention about how so much of our history has been an illusion. And these are the forces behind why much of what we have been covering here and uncovering messages has been buried, but it's going to get out. Jonathan Cooey yesterday, actually 2 days ago, reviewed a Frontline episode that came out on Tuesday of this week. And by the way, today is October 24th, 2025. And he reviewed a recent PBS Frontline biography covering the life of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And when you read the tea leaves right, and you have as much experience and background looking at this as he does, which exceeds me on the issue in particular of Bobby, you can see that Bobby has been living in a fake life. He's a victim in many ways. I'm just going to assume that he doesn't have the capacity to tell the types of lies which are suggested based upon the things that he doesn't cover as HHS Secretary of the United States of America. In fact, I think that the movie Truman Show is probably about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. more than any other person. I say that as speculation. I don't think there's been any other human being in the United States who has lived in a controlled bubble as much or as long as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I think they've tried to put other people into those situations and control them, but I don't think anyone has been close to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I think some people have been controlled to some extent, like Lyndon B. Johnson. You may notice that I very seldom speak negatively about Lyndon Johnson as a person. And I'll never know him, of course. I think he died before I was born even. But Lyndon Johnson has an extremely negative reputation as being, fill in the blank, dictator, communist, just a collectivist, lots of horrible things. But most of Lyndon, though he was ambitious, I think much of Lyndon Johnson was controlled and lifted by his wife. Now, that's, again, not to say that his wife is the epitome of evil either. That kind of defeats the point. That just takes the blame from one area and put it on another area. But I think Lyndon Johnson's power comes from elsewhere. And some of the perhaps more distasteful things which happened during his administration, I don't really necessarily think were because of his particular ambition. He just got lucky, I guess, and just happened to marry a woman, Lady Bird Taylor, whose family owned thousands and thousands of acres, which was used to construct the largest munitions plant in the United States of America, the Longhorn Munitions Factory, which I believe produced the bulk of the explosive material which was used to simulate nuclear explosions. And a lot of power comes with that. I mean, the Manhattan Project spent tons of money to build explosive material on the Taylor family property and funded the creation of the Longhorn munitions plant. The money for nukes was spent to buy TNT, which was manufactured there. And then Lady Bird Taylor goes on to really be the driving force behind Lyndon Johnson. Anyways, as these illusions are now being revealed, that some people are allowed to get into power and they can be created and destroyed. They can be used, as right now, as you can see in the Frontline episode, the portrayal that they made, the current portrayal, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is horrible. He's a psychopath, which was manufactured because of his background, because of his experiences. So you can use someone in a sacrificial way. I wouldn't be surprised if they kill him and say it was a suicide or something like that, with a suicide note that said, I just wanted to kill all Americans by taking away their vaccines because I'm so mad at what the United States did to my dad. I wouldn't be surprised if something like that were to happen. Anyways, to believe that Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s entire life is controlled, you need to agree that people closest to him, such as his current wife, Cheryl Hines, would have to be either also fooled, possible, or also in on it in some way or another. I've mentioned Cheryl Hines multiple times. I haven't researched her closely, but the fact that she is so close with Larry David, and Larry David is one of the wealthiest people in Hollywood. Larry David, of course, is a co-author of a co-writer, producer of Seinfeld, and most well-known for a show called Curb Your Enthusiasm. I've watched Larry David. I recognize his face, but I don't know why. I find him to be the least funny person I have ever seen. I can't imagine him ever making me laugh. There's something about Larry David that he's a child of God like the rest of us, but I don't know what it is. He is the least funny person I have ever seen or known about. It's really quite remarkable that he's known as this kingpin of innovative comedy. Anyways, when he created the show Curb Your Enthusiasm, it was highly celebrated. And I guess it's one of the asses that you need to kiss in order to get recognition as a successful stand-up comedian, which is really awful. I mean, you would think you would at least need to admire someone that is funny. Seriously, most people who collect shopping carts at the grocery store are funnier than Larry David. It's the truth. Crabgrass is funnier than Larry David. A housefly is funnier than Larry David. Anyways, as it turns out, now that we are breaking this illusion, no surprise, Cheryl Hines is now on the Tucker Carlson show. And the thumbnail picture is Cheryl Hines, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and Larry David. Now, Cheryl Hines came into Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s life right around the same time that his wife was committing suicide. That is just one of those odd things. And I've thrown out there the possibility before, is Larry David like matchmaker? Is Larry David somehow involved in the control of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? I don't know. I mean, the timing is suspicious, but that's really stepping out on a limb, okay? There's very little evidence, based upon what I just said so far, that that would be the case. But what I also know is that when Steve Bannon was becoming the chief White House strategist, or was appointed as a campaign manager for Donald Trump back in 2016. No, let me clear that. He was already, President Trump won in 2016, President 2017. And then at some point when Steve Bannon was, I think, having his falling out with Donald Trump in 2017, I think I have the timing right on this, although I'm not sure it matters too much, but it was 2016 or 2017. Out of the blue, Larry David had an article, I think it was in the New Yorker or New York Times, saying that he never had a previous relationship with Steve Bannon. Now, Steve Bannon, as you know, has made millions, tens, if not $100 million as part of the supporting of the syndication of Seinfeld, and was even, I think, knew people who were involved in the production of Seinfeld back in the 1990s. It would be odd. It was actually almost unimaginable that Steve Bannon, at the very least, didn't, share a few drinks with Larry David at one point. I'm not suggesting a massive conspiracy, okay? But I just thought it was odd that there would be these articles saying that they never knew each other. First off, so what if they did? It's Hollywood. It's networking. I expect, a bunch of people to bump shoulders at all different occasions. And, a lot of names are in one ear and out the other. But when I see an effort to say, hey, we never knew each other. We never met. Like, you never met? How is that possible? You're like one of the chief writers, the producers of Seinfeld, and then you have one of the people who's making the most money on Seinfeld over here. Come on. That has to be a lie. Okay. And why would you lie about that? The only reason you would lie about that, and nobody questioned it, by the way. No, not one person in the alt media, supposedly all these truthers, said, well, that's kind of odd. No, they're like, I guess they never knew each other. Let's get back to talking about all the things that we're paid to talk about. I think that they knew each other. Then when you think that, wow, Bannon seems to be so involved with everyone around Robert F. Kennedy's life, including a lot of people at Children's Health Defense and all the people at Skyhorse Publishing. In fact, Bannon seems to know everyone or a lot of people, let's scale it back a little bit, who would be involved in the orchestration of the Truman Show life, the stage set around Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And now the new wife of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., after the mother of his 4 children, who committed suicide even though they thought that her ex-husband, who soon to be ex-husband, was dangerous. That would, by the way, be the first time that has ever happened. A mature woman who has 4 kids that are growing up would commit suicide because she thinks that her husband is dangerous or something like that. That's never happened before. So right there, that should be like a Hollywood movie because it's never happened before. That would be a curiosity to most people. I think most psychologists would be stunningly interested in, gee, why is that the case? Why is that different than every other situation regarding a mother who feels as though she's threatened and her kids would be threatened? Why would that ever happen? It's never happened before. You would want to study it like a rare disease. But no, everyone just accepts, well, I guess she was just depressed. She thought she'd hang herself. And then Robert F. Kennedy remarries, and it appears odd. And now that we're highlighting this, of course, of all the people to talk to Cheryl Hines, it's Tucker Carlson. The same Tucker Carlson who made good money, presumably, as one of the key noted editors in a Harvey Weinstein, here we go again, magazine that started in 2019 called Talk Magazine, a magazine which also prominently featured Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a magazine which also started after the death of JFK Jr. And I mean that not as I don't think he died, but I don't think it was just purely an accident. I think he was killed too.
And let us not forget that Steve Bannon himself then went on to become a well-established business partner of Harvey Weinstein and Miramax, agreeing 2004-2005 to help distribute the video library of Miramax with funding which was brought in by, of all investment firms, Goldman Sachs.
1998 is also the time that the Truman Show movie came out. Just throwing that one out there. Anyways, so these are some disparate points, but of all the times for now this clown show to come on there with those 4 faces, oh my goodness, this is a response. This is a response. My little channel of 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, Jonathan Cooey, PhD, his Twitch channel with 3,000 subscribers. You do realize that we are driving the internet right now. I have seniority in doing research. I have practice in presenting information and doing things and being able to put something like this together. And mostly all the work that I did on this was done over the last several years. I just spent a few minutes, opened up a couple of windows, keyed in a number, and I'm ready to go. There's nothing I can do today that's going to make this a great presentation. This presentation was actually being made slowly over the last 10 years. 2 hours. It's a 2-hour show. But this is a response to the small channels because here's the thing. The cracks that break the dam are not the big cracks. When the dam is breaking, it's not breaking because suddenly a massive gash opens up. The tiny, tiny little fractures where only a few drops of water get through or a few tablespoons of water can sneak through are the ones which are destroying the integrity of the entire dam. It only takes a few hundred subscribers or followers on a few very good channels, which are dead on balls right, to crack the entire dam. That's why I know I don't need 1 million subscribers to crack the dam, nor does Jonathan Cooey. All we need is time and pressure, just like the movie Shawshank Redemption. It's just a matter of the math, and we are breaking the dam, and there's so much pressure to get the truth out there because people are so sick of these illusions. I really do believe that they are sick of being lied to. So this is a response to what we're doing. The Frontline show, why now? It's not even a midterm election year. There's no reason now. I think things are falling apart and they're desperately trying to get control of the narrative again. There's definitely a few things we haven't seen yet, but it's coming. It's coming. So this makes me think, is Larry David connected to the Truman Show? So I found one article that I'm going to read. It came out in 2010. It's on a blog post called Zoom In Analysis, Movie Reviews. And it's the Truman Show Part 2. This is probably, presumably, a Part 1. Not going to read it. Maybe it's better than this one, but this is what I'm going to read. There's a few sentences in here, and then I'm going to call it a show. The Truman Show Part 2. Theorist Jean Baudrillard, 1998, describes the simulacrum, simulacrum, the simulacrum, or the representation that tries to absorb simulation by interpreting it as false representation. It is a concept that describes the false realities that society presents itself with, not only through various forms of media, but the facades of our own personas and representations of ourselves as we take on various roles and images we project in our own lives. Baudrillard, in 1998, goes on to say that, quote, these would be the successive phases of the image. 1, it is the reflection of a basic reality. 2, it masks and perverts a basic reality. And 3, it masks the absence of a basic reality. And 4, it bears no relation to any reality whatsoever. It is our own pure simulacrum. And that's the end of the quote. It is a simulation of truth through various proxies that we encounter every day. Through these proxies, we are presented with illusions of reality that neither speak truth nor give us reality. Rather, a hyper-reality is created. In Peter Weir's The Truman Show, the character Truman is unaware that he is under constant surveillance by the world's largest TV studio. A purely simulated experience that, as will be described in the response, is not too different from the world we live in. Millions of viewers tune in to watch Truman's life, who is not acting but simply living his life. In this vein, Zizek, in 2001, argues that in, quote, the falsity of the reality TV shows, even if these shows are for real, people still act in them, simply play themselves, unquote. To Truman, he is acting out the routines of his life with ignorance to the fact that everyone around him is an actor. Similarly, little do we know that we are actors in the false realities of our own lives, interacting with the falseness presented by the people or actors around us. The realities or false realities presented by reality TV, like a simulated environment of being marooned on Mark Burnett's Survivor, or fictionalized reality shows like The Truman Show, or the increasing trend of actors playing themselves in TV shows like Larry David in Curb Your Enthusiasm, are not as far off as they act out their lives different from the simulacrum we encounter in our own. So Curb Your Enthusiasm, people are playing themselves. Larry David plays Larry David. Seinfeld plays Seinfeld in Seinfeld. It's kind of cool, okay? It's a parody mocking their own life in a way, and on the surface, I think it's kind of harmless. Imagine if I did a show called Kulak or Husatanak or something, I don't know, where I play myself making my own podcast. It's like an additional layer, and it could be kind of funny and cute. But what we have here, okay, is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. plays Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And Robert F. Jr. also, I believe, is unaware that there is a controlled world around him. Access is cut. Not many people get a chance to just walk up to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and start asking questions. Now, I don't know who runs the Truman Show around him, but I think it's possible that someone like Gavin DeBecker, who himself is from a Hollywood family. Now, this whole thing about we live in a simulation and don't live in a simulation, I don't find those conversations to be very productive, Life is hilarious in some ways. Life is silly and a stage in many ways. But once you see someone in your own family dying, or once you see a child for the last time before they're cremated, life suddenly becomes very real. So I don't mean to make light of that, and I think that those types of conversations and hypotheticals don't really help people all that much either. But Larry David does play a role here, and I think Steve Bannon also plays a role. So between Steve Bannon and Larry David, you have kingpins of the world of people playing themselves. And now you have the current wife of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. You have managers of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. You have the campaign manager of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Between Mary Holland, who's running Children's Health Defense. I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. believes in a lot of things that he says or told to say. So criticism of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is silly, because if he's playing the role of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and if he's also living in this Truman Show, what point is it? Whatever the case, Larry David, I believe, is part of the control. And I think this, suddenly talking about Cheryl Hines, I've just listened to little parts of it. She's already getting into a part of having a Harvey Weinstein type experience, not with Harvey Weinstein. But, there was another movie producer, and she went to his hotel room, started taking off her shoes. And what the heck is going on here? We have a country with an opioid epidemic that still no one will talk about. And we're having playful conversations about almost getting raped in Hollywood? Still, of course, not getting into the hospital protocol part. Still supporting all of the mythologies which have been promoted, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know exactly where they're going, but these are clearly responses to fractures that are happening in the dam right now. There's a few more paragraphs I just want to read here. The simulacrum that Baudrillard in 1998 describes as the false plane of illusion just described earlier, or, quote, when the real is no longer what it used to be and nostalgia assumes its full meaning. There is proliferation of myths of origin and signs of reality, of secondhand truths, objectivity, and authenticity. This is how simulation appears in the phase that concerns us, a strategy of the real, neo-real, and hyper-real, whose universal double truth is a strategy of deterrence, unquote. Herein, does the Truman Show offer us a metaphor for our own situation? Quote, the fake landscape Truman lives in is our own media landscape, which news, politics, advertising, and public affairs are increasingly made up of theatrical illusions, unquote. Transparency now. Similar to Plato's allegory of the cave, we interact with shadows on the wall, nothing more, a reflection of reality, never reality itself. If Truman were ever to make it out of the TV set or the cave, he wouldn't recognize reality and might even want to return to ignorance. Our own cave is similar to this scenario in that everything from the media landscape we can't help but being engrossed in its lifelike simulation and storyline, similar to Truman's high-tech facsimile of a sun that benevolently beams down on Truman, or the mock sincerity of the actor he mistakenly believes is his best friend, unquote. Similar interactions occur in our own lives as we are surrounded by fake personalities, representations, and different versions of ourselves. Similar to Caden and Kaufman's Synecdoche. I don't know what that is in New York. These versions, like a teacher-student relationship, are fabricated for the stage of a school setting, for example. The teacher is not nearly acting as they would prefer, posing a power relation dictating actions of authority toward the student, who is taught to be submissive and disciplined and hardworking. Neither of these actors is performing in their preferred motions. However, the simulacrum of life's stages creates these positions of hyper-reality. There are different ways we can react to the simulacrum we are presented with. Either we fully absorb it and accept its forms for whatever they are. This position can be either intentional or complete ignorance, neither of which are necessarily dishonorable, but rather tools that the simulacrum uses and fuels upon to exasperate hyperreality upon others. The lifelikeness and seamlessness of media fabrications and the fact that they are willing to go at great lengths, often bending the truth, helps transparency now. The second way we can react to the simulacrum is distance ourselves from it, or, in other words, examine its meaning and try to understand the intentions of its authors. This second attitude is what makes criticism and freedom possible. We try to leave the world we are presented in. The media awareness website Transparency Now describes the moment of when Truman begins to contemplate the second approach described above, or leave the hyper-reality he finds himself living in. So what's this? Transparency Now? I'm going to do something dangerous and just type that in. Again, this is a 15-year-old website. I have no idea. Of course, Transparency Now, I think, is a play on Apocalypse Now. Welcome to Transparency Now, a website that tries to make things clear. Is this thing still active? TV and film therapy. Anyway, interesting website. Oh, it only goes up to 2012. Interesting. So this may be a bit outdated, or maybe it's as relevant as ever. And now that we see whole Truman shows have been created for people, that's really a spooky thing. Anyways, I don't know how if they're going to unveil the whole thing or not. I don't really know where they're going, but that thumbnail picture, the fact that they're putting up Larry David, I don't believe anyone in the entire alt media space has been talking about Larry David at all, ever, until I started realizing that he obviously had a relationship with Bannon. And that means that Bannon has obviously been part of this show. And when you go all the way back to 2004, and then you see that the 9/11 video, Fahrenheit 9/11 video from Michael Moore. Michael Moore was admired, I guess, by Steve Bannon, and Steve Bannon comes out with the Faces of Evil video at the same time. You can see collusion between this side and that side, whatever those two sides are or aren't, controlling the narrative, giving you, either way, a vast range of things that you could believe. But trust me, they all start with, there were definitely hijackers.
And don't forget, Fahrenheit 9/11, that movie was funded by Harvey Weinstein. Again, same person who was the main backer of the Talk magazine and the same person who hired this very same Tucker Carlson that you see here many years ago to be a contributing editor to that magazine starting in 1999.
And then you even have the other trick that comes from architects, engineers, where they'll show you an hour of videos of all the explosions in the World Trade Center. And then they somehow just transition. They transition to, well, now that we've talked for an hour about all these bombs that were planted in the World Trade Center, let's talk about how they could have stopped it from happening by preventing the planes from getting hijacked. And nobody asks. Nobody goes, wow, that was a weird pivot. But that pivot has been happening for 20 years, and nobody has picked up on it. Anyways, it's all coming unraveled. This is an older article I read. This is a 15-year-old article, but I think it puts the idea out there. And I've seen multiple other people on various blog posts out there throw out this idea that there is this, I don't know if it's a symmetry or this weird connection between Truman Show and the way this pseudo-reality people playing themselves shows like Curb Your Enthusiasm have been made by people such as Larry David. I'm not the first person to speculate about this. Not at all. This is a 15-year-old article that is highlighting this stuff. This is the other dimension to the Truman Show. And this is the part where the Truman Show is kind of being played on all of us in a weird way. Because Bannon plays Bannon. And we sort of know this, but we accept it in a weird way. Our media landscape and our leaders are people playing roles. They are all putting on a show. As Larry David shows you in Curb Your Enthusiasm. They are actors. They are actors playing roles. We have actors playing roles of elected officials, presidents even, really. How many, where the heck did they come from? Podcasters have connections to either the State Department or other acting agencies. It is all a show. Joe Rogan has been in the Hollywood control machine. Adam Carolla, Kathy Griffin, all the Tarantino network. We're all talking about Weinstein. We have an actor who's been running movie agencies as the face of the Me Too movement. What better person to script all of it and to even help provide us patient zero, or I should say victim zero, in the movie Contagion, a movie made by actors, starring actors, that tells us what's going to happen with COVID-19. And we all accept it. And then every once in a while, you just have, a guy like myself in the corner of a bedroom. That's my little thoughts for the day. Thank you very much. God bless.